Hey, hello everyone, and welcome to Concordia University's fourth space. Thank you so much for joining us for today's event, Consumer Behavior Final Projects, MARK305 presentations. This is just part one of a multi-part series. Thank you so much for joining us. And to help situate you, we are streaming to a private YouTube today, but we are located at unceded Indigenous lands in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal. And at Fourth Space, we work with the university community to help mobilize knowledge by co-creating daily activities that examine research questions and projects in development here at the university. We're also running this as a live stream Zoom meeting, so we have some friends joining us via Zoom. During the Q&A, if you have any questions, you can pop those into the chat, and we'll do our best to get those to our presenters. Anyone in the space, of course, if you have questions, we'll get a microphone to you for that. But before that we begin, it's my pleasure also to introduce our MC for this afternoon, Richard Sejean, who's a lecturer, LTA in the John Molson School of Business and Marketing. Welcome in, Richard.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we're also very lucky to have Marc Bichet here as our esteemed judge. And just to give us a little background on Marc holds a law degree from the University of Montreal. He's been a litigation lawyer since 2007, practicing family, civil, and commercial law in small law firms up until 2012. And during that time, he also wrote articles published in Ontario and Canadian law journals. After that, he joined the litigation department of the Barreau de Quebec, where he regularly represented the professional order before the courts, including the Court of Appeal, and acted as the legal advisor to the Barreau de Quebec. He's also worked in administrative, criminal, civil, and professional law. And also since 2015, Marc has been a lawyer with the Quebec Centre for Environmental Law and holds the deep conviction that environmental law brings together the most important issues of the present and the future. Welcome, Marc. Thanks for joining us. Over to you.
What a coincidence. I had the same part planned for Marc. Guys, who's nervous? Show of hands. It's okay. Don't be. You all worked super hard all semester, and we couldn't be more thrilled to be here right now. And in fact, just to release some energy, a round of applause for you guys before we get started. Okay, and be relaxed. You see the setting here. It's not a huge performance. We really want to learn from your projects. So let me kind of kick it off with a little bit of background. Okay, so according to UNICEF, about 15% of the world's population, which is 1 in 7 people, still lacks access to basic education. Okay? Almost 10% of the world, so that's 800 million people, live in extreme poverty. According to the World Bank, that means that they live off of less than $1.90 a day. And the World Health Organization states that more than 90% of the world's population lives in places where the air is unhealthy, right? But thankfully, the situation is not going unnoticed. And in 2015, the United Nations developed their 17 SDGs, their Sustainability Development Goals, to align efforts and set the foundation for a more sustainable, more resilient future. So you know these goals very well. No poverty, access to clean drinking water, climate action, and so on. Okay, and on many fronts, we're moving in the right direction. Okay, with reports of reductions in extreme poverty, improvements in access to clean water, and the expansion of renewable energy, and the list goes on. Okay, but that said, much remains to be done. And progress is not uniform across regions. And so this has left many wondering, is the cause legitimate? Are our efforts futile? And how can any individual truly make a difference? Well, with regards to the latter, the expression decide with your wallets comes to mind. And studying how people decide with their wallets is precisely what consumer psychologists do. Okay, so per the introduction, over the next 2 weeks, in a series of 4 sessions, 35 groups of JMSB consumer behavior students will share their perspectives following a semester-long investigation into consumer motivations for sustainable consumption, each focusing on a specific SDG. The presentations will be made to an audience of JMSB peers, as well as folks from the industry, including today's guest, which has already been introduced. So without further ado, Team 1, let's hear it for Team 1.
So with that being said, we are here today. My name is Kayla. I'm joined with my colleagues Dominic, Nithita, Jade, and Ellie, and we are here to present to you Fashion Below Water. So we found that there was a really big issue with the attitude-action gap in the sustainable fashion industry. And this was really contributing to the growth of fast fashion and thereby the degradation of our oceans. And so keeping this problem in mind, we came up with our research statement. So how does the fashion industry's use of feel-good versus guilt-based marketing impact consumer perception and purchasing behavior? And so to delve more into these issues, we came up with two different types to garner research. So the first one was a 50-person survey, and then we looked more in depth with 10 interview participants into this issue. And so now I'm going to pass the floor to Dominic to speak more about the analysis of the industry.
Thank you, Kayla. So taking a glimpse at life underwater with the SDG goal set by the UN to motion towards sustainability and the conservation of our oceans, and highlighting specific targets aimed at reducing pollution, stating that without marine ecosystem, billions will lose their jobs. So this shows that it's not just a sustainability issue, but as well as an economic issue as well. And the current efforts are not meeting urgent needs, meaning the current rulings and settings in motion are not enough to battle these issues with our ocean pollution. Now let's take a closer look into ocean pollution itself. 33 billion pounds of plastic enter the ocean every year, causing ocean acidification and endangering the marine species. And a big cause of this is the fashion industry, as fashion accounts for 20 to 35% of all microplastics that find their way into the oceans. That's quite a big chunk. And the sole fashion industry accounts for a $7.8 billion market share, as where fast fashion has a $100 billion market share. So that is really coming from there economically. So the key takeaway here is that the fashion industry is a major contributor to ocean degradation.
So combining our interviews as well as our surveys, we came up with a key consumer that represents that information. So I introduced to you Alex. Alex is an 18 to 45-year-old who is middle income and well educated. When it comes to what persuades her to make purchases, first is style, then quality, style, then price, then quality. Now, when we take a look over here at her favorite brands, we see that we have Zara, H&M, Frank & Oak, and Patagonia. But what's really interesting here is that when Alex is shopping at Zara and H&M, she feels overwhelmed. But when she's shopping at Frank & Oak and Patagonia, she feels excited. And so these are her attitudes towards those brands. But when it comes to her actual purchasing behaviors, that's where we see something a little bit interesting. So when it comes to feel-good marketing, there really is little change in her consumption behaviors, but when it comes to guilt-based marketing, we see a lot of impact on her ability to want to make a change and want to make more sustainable purchases. And so if we had to remember one thing from Alex's journey, it would be that guilt-based marketing has the greatest impact on potential purchasing behavior. And so now I'm going to pass it off again to Dominic to talk about our implementation.
So where do we go from here? Our key recommendation and implementation that we would suggest is, as Kayla mentioned, taking more from the guild-based marketing, so having the information and authenticity when it comes to the advertising of the slow fashion products, highlighting the urgency of protecting our oceans and assuring that the messaging aligns with the values of your product. But there is something to be taken from the feel-good marketing campaigns of it, as where you make the consumer feel good, feel excited about their purchase. So that's why, well, that's an aspect we would want to take from there. And this is what we learned from our surveys and interviews, and we will gladly dive in deeper to that in the Q&A. Now, this has been our strategy and recommendation, and we open the floor to questions, and thank you for listening.
So, hello everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. So, just by a show of hand, I see that everyone here has talked about topics of sustainability, practices, ethical practices. But does anyone know, by a show of hand, what fair trade is? So, I only see a few hands up, less than 10. So, this is really reflective of our topic. Okay, there we go. So I'm just going to present my colleagues. So we have Karim, Julia, Samir, Hafiza, and Andrew. And we have chosen the topic of reduced inequalities. So we chose the industry, the fast food industry. So here it goes. So how does consumer perception of fair trade in the fast food industry impact their purchasing decisions? So, and what strategies as well can they implement by companies such as McDonald's, which is one of the largest corporations in the fast food industry, do to reduce inequalities? So this is the question in two parts that we decided to delve in. So for the methodology and to collect the data, we have chosen the method of a survey, which was the most efficient that we had. We had 18 questions, some open-ended questions, and some that were more yes-no questions. So that's what we did for this. And we had a sample of 130. So it's not very representative of a larger population, but that's the largest that we were able to do in the short amount of time that we had. So we used multiple sampling method. One is the simple random sampling, which means that you take samples out of a population and they have equal chances to be selected. And we also used convenience sampling, which means that we went directly to McDonald's and interviewed each and every one that were entering the premises. We also went to a few schools, so that just gives you an area to work with. So I'm just gonna give the mic to Karim to go into the results and analysis.
Thank you, Leila. So in the results and analysis, we started at the beginning of the survey, right after our demographic question. We've asked people, so what does fair trade mean to you? And most of the people said that they had no idea. And right after that, we gave them the definition of fair trade. And at the end of the survey, we've asked them this following question. After completing this survey, have your views, perception of unfair trade changed in regard to your buying decision? And 75% of them agreed. So now let's move to the limitation and future ideas. So we believe for the limitation, we have the limited awareness, because as we saw, most people do not know what fair trade is. Then we believe that there will be a price pressure because large companies such as McDonald's might bargain the prices with farmers and producers in underdeveloped countries. Then we have the geographical challenges because we know that it might be hard to reach producers and farmers in underdeveloped countries. And there might be also lack of transparency. So for future ideas, we decided that the first thing that should be implemented would be to educate people on fair trade by creating campaigns. Then to create, to advocate for a policy change where the government would not force, but I'd say encourage companies such as McDonald's to be more transparent by setting new laws and regulation, but also create some incentives for these companies. So now I'm going to hand back the mic to Leila for the conclusion.
So in conclusion, we had a hypothesis that concerning our research question, it was that if they have a positive association, positive perception, they will have a better awareness and reduce inequalities, which means that it will influence their buying decisions. And also, we know that during the research, I think it's also reflective of the audience even today, 60% of our participants were students. We did ask if they were employed or unemployed, and we had a range of their, how do we say this, their income. So we were able to see that no matter what their income was, they were not aware of the definition of fair trade, which means that this is not an issue that's just targeted to students. It's also targeted as a population in general, which means that awareness and education should start from, let's say, kindergarten, something as little, because our participants were 18 and up. And they were at least undergraduate levels, which shows that there's a lot of opportunities for marketers, for a big company such as McDonald's, to really participate and encourage fair trade. So that was the presentation, so I'll leave the floor for any further questions.
Hello everyone, my name is Yasmin, this is my team, and today we will be presenting the electric drive towards urban sustainability. Our SDG is Sustainable Cities and Communities, specifically looking at sustainable transport and the shift from gas-powered cars to electric cars. The goal is to change our lives today to make for a better, more sustainable future. Our research question aims to study the relationship between electric cars and sustainability and how Gen Z and millennials' values relate to this concept. To answer the initial part of our research question, we gathered both secondary data and primary data. This graph represents our secondary data, and it shows the relationship between gas-powered cars and electric cars with their carbon emissions. The green line representing electric cars shows a much lower emission rate. In terms of our primary data, we asked our survey respondents, in your opinion, to what extent do electric cars contribute to urban sustainability? We had more than half of our survey respondents respond that they believe that it does.
I'm inviting everyone here to predict the future with me. My group and I have seen exponential growth rates when it comes to the sales of electric cars. In China alone, there was 4.4 million sales in 2022. In Norway, 88% of cars sold are electric. The growth rates in Canada, United States, Europe are all doubling, along with the help of government initiatives. In Canada, by year 2035, 100% of new passenger vehicles sold should be electric. So please, everyone here, either close your eyes or just imagine the future. In 40 years, by a show of hands, who here believes that electric cars will dominate the car market? Well, we asked our survey respondents a similar question. We wanted to know how likely they were to purchase an electric car within the next 10 years. Roughly 70% said yes. In China, Canada, Europe, these sales are reaching almost 15 million electric cars in 2023. The compound annual growth rate is set to be worth $1.7 billion in USD in 2032. So join on and hop on the inevitable future.
So, as we can see, the future is inevitably electric when it comes to cars. This is backed up by the agreements of 120 countries to achieve net zero emissions by the year 2050, and the Sustainable Development Goals that aim to significantly reduce vehicle emissions as they account for a quarter of all emissions worldwide. So we decided to focus on the Canadian market for our strategies, as it still represents an underserved market when it comes to the electric car industry, and our research on Gen Zs and millennials showed that there's high potential for growth in this market as well. Our primary data showed that millennials and Gen Zs are already highly likely to purchase electric cars. However, would be even more likely should we see more availability, more affordability when it comes to electric cars, and a higher availability when it comes to electric car charging stations. So essentially, our strategies are to use research-backed theories of involvement in order to create discussion, place thought, as well as educate consumers on the technological advancements that are coming to the electric car market, which will create involvement and attachment to the idea of using electric cars in the future, as well as finally inciting purchase decisions when they feel safe and secure owning an electric car.
Now, to answer our initial question, My team and I have concluded that electric cars emit far less CO2 emissions than traditional gas-powered cars. This aligns with the growing concerns regarding environmental sustainability in urban areas, which is directly linked to the increase in demand for electric cars. Therefore, these consumer values have proven to us that electric cars are the solution. Now, please look underneath your seats. We have provided a QR code that links to a survey by myclimate.org that assesses your personal carbon footprint to see if you need an electric car. Please remember to recycle these papers once you dispose them. As we conclude our electric drive towards urban sustainability, we would like to thank you for charging this conversation with your time.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. We're the A-Girls, and today we are going to be discussing SDG 4 and the consumer electronic industry. So, brief overview, we'll go over the SDG, our field, our problem and research question, as well as the data that we gathered, and finally, some strategies that we're proposing. So, SDG number 4 seeks to promote inclusive and quality education for all, as well as lifelong learning opportunities. The marketing research question that we are trying to answer is actually particularly looking at target 4.4, which discusses increasing information and communication technology skills on youth and adults alike, as well as 4.A, which seeks to upgrade learning environments. Our question also naturally intertwines with SDG 12, as well as seeks to promote a circular economy. So when we think about the consumer electronic industry, the link between SDG 4 and sustainable consumption may seem very detached. In fact, during our research, we found that the efforts that this industry is doing to promote SDG 4 quality education are kept internally, so they don't really involve the consumer. So what we were looking at is that despite a slowdown in sales in previous years, sales are expected to increase following this year, while replacement cycles of our personal devices are expected to become shorter. And this is where our research question lies. So for the benefit of SDG 4, as well as the benefit of consumers and the stakeholders in the field, what we're trying to look at here is what strategies can these stakeholders implement into the disposal processes of personal devices for the benefit of SDG 4, as well as how to market these strategies so that consumers actually go in and encourage and actually do these processes themselves. So a very quick aside, by the way, we do acknowledge that access to new and upgraded information technology products is part of achieving this goal. However, what we are focusing on is trying to use the products that are still very well usable and salvageable to promote education, and so that they don't end up in landfills earlier than they should, or that they're not hoarded in consumers' houses.
We conducted a survey and got 31 respondents, and we were trying to just look over the general consumption and sustainability overview in general and the disposable of personal devices. Our target consumers were 18 to 24-year-olds living around the urban area of Quebec, and that were like middle to upper middle class. And we're looking at the consumer motivations and barriers. And what we, like the summary of the motivations was that personal utility and economic utility were one of the main drivers, as well as self-expression. And as for the barriers, the things that kind of push them back from disposing their personal devices were economic issues, as well as discomfort in donating a device that like barely works for them. Looking at the bar graph, we can see that 23 out of the 31 respondents believe that the tech industry does have like a vital role in lifelong learning. That means like kind of online education, skill development, and personal interest. So this shows that tech companies kind of can motivate consumers to support companies that align with these values. We also collected data that shows that 61% of the respondents do engage or consider engaging in sustainable activities, but this kind of like contradicts our data, which you will see later. You can also see the frequency of the upgrades and replacements of the digital devices, as many people take around 2 to 5 years to upgrade or change it. The people that replace their devices every 2 to 3 years are kind of the people who just want new technology, care more about the features, while the 4 to 5 years care more about the functionality as well as the cost. Now, looking at the barriers, we can see that like many people were neutral or disagreed that sustainability was a consideration when they were buying their products, and this kind of contradicts what they were saying with the 61% who were kind of trying to engage. So this shows like lack of awareness on sustainable options, and most of like the factors of their sustainability like disposal was dysfunction and desire for new technology. For the strategies, we're trying to implement campaigns, events with educational like companies and schools, yeah, we can go into that more in the Q&A since our time is up. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. We are the Aardvark team, and we were most interested in Goal 15, which is Life on Land from the UN Sustainable Development Goals. I'm Mia, and this is my teammate Amanda, and we're going to be discussing the effect of the leather industry on the terrestrial ecosystem. So our research question for this project is, to what extent are university students aware of the effect of the leather shoe consumption on terrestrial ecosystems?
To begin, we want to focus our attention on some of the key players that we have identified in the leather shoe industry. So we have identified Adidas, Nike, and Doc Martens as some of those key players. While these brands do offer some leather alternative shoes, the majority of their products are leather shoes. The leather industry has a huge impact on life on land, particularly in 3 broad categories: soil quality, the cattle themselves, and deforestation. We won't go into the specific details in this short presentation, but if you are interested, we encourage questions later.
So our research was primarily focused on university students, and we surveyed around 50 in total. We asked about 10 questions, including, are you a vegetarian or a vegan? If vegan leather and regular leather shoes were the same price, which would you be more inclined to buy? And how brand conscious are you? So do you buy only big brands, or do you not care? These questions were designed to establish relationships between different variables and potentially predict the success of future marketing endeavors within certain groups of university students.
From this data, we found several surprising things. So in general, vegan leather alternatives are relatively new to the market, and we just found consumers were not really aware that these options were available. We found that simply drawing attention to the leather alternative options made consumers more willing to purchase vegan leather shoes. Another notable finding was that the majority of people would still purchase leather shoes, even if leather and vegan shoes were the same price. We found that this was because people deemed leather to be of higher quality than vegan leather.
Therefore, there are, in our opinion, 2 main marketing options for the leather shoe industry, particularly for the brands we mentioned before. Number 1 would be a move to a sustainable source of leather and market a sustainable leather shoe. This would cater to the majority of the population who would still purchase leather shoes regardless of price. The leather itself is already a relatively sustainable practice, since it is a byproduct of the beef industry. However, research shows that obviously the beef industry itself is very damaging and not sustainable, which creates a barrier for those eco-conscious consumers. The second marketing option that could be implemented is to make use of celebrity endorsements. Nike recently released the Billie Eilish x Nike Air Alpha Force 88 shoe using synthetic leather. One of the main reasons it was highly successful was because Billie Eilish collaborated on the shoe. This resulted in a lot of her supporters purchasing this shoe, regardless of its vegan leather content. Creating celebrity partnerships with different kinds of celebrities could prove beneficial for targeting these particular kinds of consumers.
One of the lesser-known alternatives to leather is cactus leather. Cactus leather is a sustainable alternative that can be used to market to environmentally conscious individuals who may not be interested in some of the shoes that Mia mentioned earlier. For vegan leather alternatives to work, however, we believe that education is key. Many people are both unaware of leather alternatives and perceive them as being lower quality. Educating consumers about the benefits of using leather alternatives and their endurance is of utmost importance. Furthermore, offering vegan leather at a slightly lower price can result in an increase in sales by removing price as a pressure point. Thank you for listening. We open the floor to questions.
Congratulations for getting to this point. Yeah, we wanted you to learn about consumer motivations and barriers, but we also really, as professors, wanted to remind you about these SDG goals. So please be ambassadors for us moving forward. You are our future. Don't screw it over for us, all right? So congratulations on getting to this point. Best of luck beginning of the semester. Thank you. And Sean as well.
Thank you again. I also want to mention we see a lot of slides here at Force-Space, so I have to take 1 minute to say that was great work on those slides, bringing them all in on time, and they look fantastic. Okay, thank you.